The largest cavalry charge in history saved a continent in less than 1 hour. 20,000 horsemen came down the slopes of the Kahlenberg at full gallop. At their core rode 3,000 Polish hussars in iron plate, with hawk feather wings rising above their shoulders. They struck the Ottoman center at sunset on September 12, 1683. The Ottoman line shattered in less than 30 minutes. The Grand Vizier fled south, was strangled with a silk cord at Belgrade, and his head was packed in a velvet bag. The Ottoman Empire never threatened the heart of Europe again. This is the deep dive of the Siege of Vienna. Vienna sat at the eastern edge of the Holy Roman Empire on the Danube River. It was a walled city of about 100,000 people, the seat of the Habsburg Emperor. The Habsburgs ruled most of Central Europe from this single city. To take Vienna was to break the back of Christian Europe. The Ottoman Turks knew this. They had been preparing the campaign for years. The Ottoman Empire in 1683 was the most powerful state in the world. It stretched from Algiers in the west to the Caspian Sea in the east. It commanded the Balkans, all the Holy Land, the old Egypt of the Mamluks, the cradle of Mesopotamia. Its army numbered in the hundreds of thousands. Its janissaries were the finest infantry of the age. The Sultan in Istanbul was Mehmed IV, a passionate hunter who preferred his estates to the throne. The real power belonged to his Grand Vizier, Kara Mustafa Pasha. Kara Mustafa had risen from a household slave to the second most powerful man on earth. He commanded the largest standing army in the world. He had one obsession. The Ottomans called it Kizil Elma, the Golden Apple. The Golden Apple was Vienna. Generations of Ottoman dreamers had told stories of it. To take it would mean immortality. The conqueror would be remembered for 1,000 years. In the spring of 1683, Kara Mustafa raised his standard at Belgrade. His army was vast even by Ottoman standards. 150,000 soldiers under arms. Janissaries, Sipahi cavalry, sappers, artillerymen, Tatars from the Crimea, Hungarian rebels under Imre Tharkali. Behind the soldiers came another 100,000 camp followers, merchants, religious functionaries. The army marched north along the Danube Valley. It moved at 5 miles a day, dragging 200 siege guns over rough country. Every village in its path emptied. The terror of the Turk had haunted Europe for 2 centuries. In Vienna, the Emperor Leopold I listened to the reports from the south. Leopold was 30 years old, devout, kind, and not a soldier. By July 1st, the Ottoman army was within a week of the city. The emperor faced a brutal decision that would define his reign. He could stay and lead the defense personally. The Habsburg dynasty would fall with him if Vienna fell. Or he could leave and survive. The dynasty could fight on from elsewhere. On July 7th, Leopold and his court fled west to Linz, then on to Passau. The defense of Vienna fell to Count Ernst Rudiger von Starhemberg. Starhemberg was a professional soldier, 50 years old, hard, methodical, and short on illusions. He had 12,000 soldiers in the garrison. The Ottomans had 150,000. He had 8,000 armed citizens of Vienna to back them up. The defenders began burning the suburbs the moment the emperor left. They wanted no buildings standing close enough to give the Ottomans cover. The smoke of the burning suburbs rose for days. The Viennese watched in silence from the walls. On July 14th, 1683, the Ottoman vanguard reached the city. By the next morning, 200,000 men were camped around Vienna. The Ottoman tents stretched from the Danube on the north all the way around to the southwest. The Grand Vizier set up his pavilion in plain view of the walls. The Ottoman trumpets sounded the dawn. The Viennese could hear them inside the gates. Kara Mustafa offered Starhemberg the standard terms of surrender. Give up the city, become Muslim, be spared. Resist, the city would be sacked, the men killed, the women and children taken into slavery. Starhemberg rejected the terms without ceremony. The siege guns opened fire that afternoon. The defenders settled in for what they knew would be many weeks. None of them knew it would be 60 days. The Ottoman strategy was not assault, it was mining. Ottoman sappers were the best in the world. They dug trenches forward each night. Each morning, the trenches were closer to the walls. Beneath the trenches, the sappers tunneled down. Then they dug under the bastions of Vienna. They packed the tunnels with kegs of black powder. Each mine blew a hole in the wall. Each new hole drew an Ottoman storming party at the breach. The defenders responded with counter mines. They tunneled under the Ottoman tunnels. They listened with drums turned downward, with brass cups pressed against stone. When they heard the digging, they set their own charges. The two armies fought a buried war for 60 days. Most of it was sound and silence. Above ground, the bombardment never stopped. Inside the walls, life broke down by stages. The rationing began the first week. By August, men were eating cats. By September, they were eating dogs. By the end, they were eating rats. Disease arrived in the summer heat. Dysentery, typhus, infected wounds. 3,000 citizens died of disease alone. The defenders held the walls in shifts of 12 hours, then 8, then 4. The exhausted men slept in their armor, leaning on their pikes. Starhemberg himself slept on a wooden bench in the cathedral square. He visited every bastion at every dawn and every dusk. He held the city together with discipline, faith, and sheer presence of will. By early September, the Ottomans had reached the Burg Bastion, the heart of the city wall. The defenders knew they had perhaps 10 days left. Far to the west, Pope Innocent the 11th was working desperately. The Pope had spent his pontificate trying to unite Christian Europe against the Ottoman threat. He had bankrolled the Habsburgs. He had pressured the Italian states. He had sent envoy after envoy to Poland. The result was the Holy League, a coalition of Austria, Poland, Venice, and the Papal States. The League's military commander would be Jan the Third Sobieski, King of Poland. Sobieski was 54 years old in 1683. Tall, broad, bearded, soldierly. He had spent his entire adult life fighting Turks on the southern Polish frontier. He had broken Ottoman armies at Khartoum, at Lvov, at Lysianus. He had been elected King of Poland on the strength of his military record alone. He knew Kara Mustafa would not lift the siege voluntarily. He knew the only answer was to march to Vienna. In late August, Sobieski raised his army at the Polish camp at Krakow. 27,000 Poles. Their core was the famous winged hussars. The Polish king joined his army to the forces of the Holy Roman Empire. Charles V, Duke of Lorraine, commanded 23,000 imperial troops. The Bavarians brought 11,000 under Maximilian Emanuel, the Blue Elector. The Saxons brought 9,000 under Johann Georg III. Other German states added another 10,000. The relief force totaled about 80,000 soldiers, less than two-thirds the Ottoman strength at Vienna. The relief army assembled near the town of Tulln on September 5th. Over the next 5 days, the 80,000 soldiers crossed the Danube and marched east. They moved through the Vienna woods, across rough wooded ridges. They climbed into the high hills above Vienna from the northwest. The hills were called the Kahlenberg and the Leopoldsberg. They rose high enough to look down on the Ottoman camp below. The Ottomans had not fortified the hills. Kara Mustafa had assumed no army could come down them. On the night of September 11th, the Polish vanguard took the summit. The Ottoman patrols at the top fled or were killed. Below them, the Ottoman camp stretched out in the moonlight, 200,000 men in tents. Beyond the camp, the besieged city of Vienna burned faintly in the dark. The relief army spent the night dragging their cannon up the slopes. They could see the flash of Ottoman mines going off against the city walls. They knew Vienna would fall within days if they did not break the siege now. Sobieski celebrated Mass at dawn on September 12th with his hussars. He blessed the war banners. He prayed for the men. Then he ordered the army down the mountain. The imperial infantry on the left wing attacked first at 6 in the morning. Duke Charles of Lorraine led them down the slopes through dense woods. The Ottoman left wing of Janissaries and Sipahi resisted hard, then gave ground. The Imperials fought their way forward, yard by yard, all morning. By noon, they were halfway down the slope. By 2 in the afternoon, they were fighting on level ground at the edge of the Ottoman camp. Kara Mustafa had been awakened by the gunfire at 6. He had not slept in 2 days. He believed the attack from the heights was a feint. He kept most of his army at the siege lines. By the time he realized the danger, half his strength was committed to 2 fronts. By 4 in the afternoon, the Imperial wing had pushed the Ottoman left back nearly 2 miles. The Bavarian and Saxon center had broken the Ottoman trench lines in the middle of the field. The Ottoman army was bending, but it was not yet breaking. Kara Mustafa rallied his Sipahi reserves and threw them into the gap. The fight was now 8 hours old. The men on both sides were exhausted. Sobieski had held the Polish cavalry back through the entire morning. He waited on the right wing on his great grey stallion in iron plate, watching for the moment. By 5 o'clock, the moment had come. Kara Mustafa's army was strung out across 2 miles of front, pinned by Imperial and Bavarian infantry. The Ottoman center was thin. Their reserves were spent. Sobieski raised his saber. The order went down the line. 20,000 horsemen moved forward at the walk. 3,000 winged hussars rode at the center of the cavalry wing, in 3 deep ranks. Their lances were 18 feet long. Their armor was steel plate. Their wings rose above their shoulders. They went from a walk to a trot at 400 yards, from a trot to a canter at 300, from a canter to a full gallop at 200. The ground shook. The thunder reached the city walls miles away. Citizens on the walls of Vienna heard it. They thought another mine had gone off. The hussars hit the Ottoman center at full gallop, with their lances down. The first Ottoman line collapsed. The lances went straight through armor. The second line broke. The Sipahi cavalry behind it tried to wheel, but had nowhere to go. The Ottoman center cracked open. The Polish cavalry came through. Kara Mustafa watched from his command tent. He could see his army folding in on itself. He ordered the army to fall back to the main camp. By then, there was no main camp. The hussars rode straight through the Ottoman camp, past Kara Mustafa's own pavilion. They cut through tent ropes. They smashed cooking fires. They scattered everything in their path. The Ottoman army, 8 hours into the fight, and now broken at the center, dissolved. Men ran south, then east, then anywhere they could. The Tatars rode away first. By 6 in the evening, the field was won. The whole charge had taken less than 30 minutes. Sobieski rode into the empty Ottoman command tent at dusk. He found Kara Mustafa's gilded saddle, his silver inkstand, his green war banner. He found the Grand Vizier's pet ostrich, killed by Ottoman servants rather than let the Christians take it. He found a green standard claimed to be the banner of the Prophet, the most sacred relic in the army. He took the standard and sent it to Pope Innocent the 11th in Rome. He wrote to his wife Marie Casimir the next morning. The letter began, "We came, we saw, God conquered." The Ottoman dead lay across 2 miles of countryside, 15,000 at minimum. 300 siege cannons, 10,000 horses, the whole baggage train were captured. Inside Vienna, the defenders staggered out of the broken walls at sunrise. They had lost 10,000 of their own. Half the original garrison were dead or dying. Starhemberg was nearly unrecognizable. He had not removed his armor in 24 hours. Sobieski rode into Vienna 2 days later. The cathedral bells rang in celebration for the first time in months. Kara Mustafa survived the battle. He retreated south through Hungary in disgrace. At Belgrade, in December, the Sultan's executioner arrived from Istanbul. Kara Mustafa was strangled with a silk bowstring on Christmas Day. His head was packed in a velvet bag and sent back to the Sultan in Istanbul. The Ottoman Empire never again besieged Vienna. The tide of expansion stopped that day. The Habsburgs went on the offensive. Within 16 years, all of Hungary was theirs. The largest empire in the world began its long, slow contraction. It would take 200 years to die. Sobieski returned to Krakow in November. He was hailed as a Christian hero of Europe. His own kingdom never thanked him. The Polish nobility resented his power. He died in 1696, sick, frustrated, his country soon partitioned by its neighbors. The winged hussars, who had broken the Ottoman center, were already a vanishing species. Within 50 years, lighter cavalry and the musket would make their heavy armor obsolete. The last regiment of winged hussars was disbanded in 1776. But the legend held. Polish children still recite the names of the regiments that charged at Vienna. The first coffee houses of Vienna grew from the captured Ottoman supply tents. The Viennese had never tasted coffee before. They found sacks of the beans in the camp. The first European coffee house opened in Vienna later that year. The croissant story, the one about a baker making crescent-shaped pastries to mark the Ottoman flag, is mostly a myth. So is the story of the bagel being shaped like Sobieski's stirrup. Both came later. What is real is what happened on the field that day. The Ottomans lost more than a battle. They lost the mood of empire. For 4 centuries, they had advanced. After Vienna, they retreated. The Habsburgs lost a city full of dead, but kept Vienna, kept Hungary, kept the empire. The Poles saved Europe and lost their own kingdom within a generation. The Ottomans had ridden up to the gates of Central Europe with the largest army in history. The Christian alliance, smaller, hungrier, less unified, had stopped them in less than one afternoon. The whole map of the world bent that day. What battle do you think still bends the future? Tell us below. And always, don't let history be forgotten.